Well, good afternoon on a special day. My name is Don Altemeyer. I'm the president of the Building Authority, the Board of Directors of the Indianapolis-Marion County Building Authority. As you know, this building's 55 years old, and the old girl does pretty well, but she's never had a day like today. And it's a really special gathering we've got in front of us. And we're doing a plaza out in front, as you know. You'll see more about it. And one of the reasons we were able to do that is because of a nice grant from the Lilly Endowment. And I'd like to introduce Clay Robbins, the chairman of Lilly Endowment, to kick off this meeting.
It's a real privilege for me to be here today, and I want to take the opportunity. I've never had a chance when all the mayors are here to say how proud I am to have been able to interact with you all over the years. And when you look around the country now and the kind of civil dialogue that is not present in a lot of places, and the way that you all have conducted yourself as our leaders, I think we're all very, very proud. And I talk to my colleagues in other cities, and they all recognize that. And the success we have here in this community is in large part due to the capable and the caring and principled leadership you all have shown. And it's been a privilege for me to work with you throughout these many years. So thank you all very much. I'm very pleased to know that they are going to name this new plaza after you, Senator Lugar. If we had known that when we made the grant, we might have doubled it. I'll take that. When we made the grant, we did not know that. So I'm just saying, you know, Steve, I don't know, maybe there's something for you guys. What I wanted to say, though, is that we're all so proud of our city and how vibrant it is and how distinctive it is around the country. And that has a lot to do with Senator Lugar and the leadership he showed in the early days of his career as mayor to really try to bring back the downtown and the city of Indianapolis as we knew it then, with Unigov and all that came with that. And I want to tell you, from my perspective at the Lilly Endowment, it's clear in our records that you impressed Eli Lilly. And Jim, you know this. And if that had not happened, a lot of things might have been different. And I wanted to read from you from Eli Lilly's biography. In the summer of 1972, Eli Lilly met with Indianapolis Mayor Richard Lugar, a young and ambitious Republican with progressive ideas about improving the city. The two men discussed the quality of life in the central business district, which, like many cities, was becoming largely a place for suburban communities to serve out their 8-hour days. One of the projects that two men discussed was the old city market, then standing in danger of the wrecker's ball. Lilly was eager to help, writing Beasley that I have had in mind for a long time that we should be doing something for the city. 3 days later, Lilly wrote Lugar to tell him that the endowment would likely provide support to renovate City Market. Soon restored and alive with patrons, the market became one of the first signs of a revitalized downtown. Lilly was greatly pleased when a threat developed that fast food franchises might drive out local sandwich, fruit, and vegetable stands. He wrote an endowment officer that his secretary, Anita Martin, and other old-timers are very much worried about allowing the Kentucky Chickens and Burger Boogies to invade the market house. Is there any way we can influence the authorities in this matter to keep the foreign interlopers from having stands in this place? So he really did like the city market and what it stood for. And you know, it's still there, it's still vibrant. Some of you mayors we've worked with to keep it going over the years, but that was the start of it. And I will tell you that I had a little research done this morning. Since that time, the endowment has contributed $2.2 billion just out of the Community Development Division to the city of Indianapolis. I think it's very fitting that this plaza, so close to the city market and the center of town, would be named after you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Steve Goldsmith. And I do want to say a little bit about Steve because I enjoyed working with Steve, and he kept up the momentum from Senator Lugar and Mayor Hudnut, who we all miss today very much. But Steve worked very hard, and if you'll remember, there were lots of holes in downtown Indianapolis when Steve came into being mayor. And he got the mall going, and he got the convention center expanded, and the arts garden, and the canal, worked a lot to get the canal where it is now. Just an awful lot of work done. And not only in the physical part of the city, but also in the social services and human sector. If you think about the Marion County Commission on Youth, the Coalition for Human Service Planning, the Savvy Database, all of these programs came out of Steve's administration. And they're still around, Steve, and they're still doing good work. So we know that you're out there teaching people all over the country how to run a good city, and we're proud of you very much. And it's my pleasure to introduce you today.
Mayor. Dick Lugar got demoted from mayor to senator along the way. And Clay, it's easy to look. It's easier to look like a visionary mayor with a partner like Lily Endowment. Just as a small asset that we all had. Let me just take a minute to also celebrate the occasion and do it very briefly. I served 25 years in this building, right? 12 years as prosecutor and 8 years as mayor, and probably didn't even know I was a lawyer for you in the other corner of this building and for Bill Hudnut. And so the building and Dick Lugar both are iconic for me in terms of public service. A really brief story that the senator knows. So I wanted to become mayor because of Dick Lugar, right? I was elected president of Broadwell High School Student Council, and the head of the school board wrote me a letter and said, "Congratulations, I hope you consider a career in public service," signed Dick Lugar. I kept that letter for 25 years, right? And when Dick was mayor, my first job to earn enough money to go to law school was in the clerk's office on the first floor. I was trying to imagine how I'd ever earn my way up to the 25th floor so I could be like Dick Lugar. So as we think about the building and I think about service, and I walked around the observatory and looked at all the things from Unigov to the resurgence of downtown Indianapolis, there's, to me personally, and I think on behalf of the city, nobody who more stands for professionalism, integrity, vision, and the standard of what you want for a public servant than Dick Lugar, and I'm delighted to celebrate the naming of the Plaza today. Thank you, Senator. Now, my pleasure to introduce another distinguished mayor of Indianapolis, Mark Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor Goldsmith, and welcome, everybody. What a day. I want to start by thanking Mayor Hogsett for having the idea to do this, not the idea for the plaza that belongs to Mayor Ballard, but the idea to name it after Dick Lugar. And as I'm sure everybody else here will say, I cannot imagine a more fitting tribute to him than to give him such a prominent place for his name to be displayed and for his legacy to be celebrated than in the plaza right outside the city county building here. I grew up with a father who was very hardworking, and he had 5 kids, and we didn't have a lot of time one-on-one time where the two of us would go to a ball game or something like that, but we did one time, I recall. Back in the late 1960s, we went to a Pacers game, and the Pacers must have only been around at that point 2 or 3 years. And I don't know whether my dad knew this or not, but when we went to this game together, it was announced that at halftime, the mayor of Indianapolis would be courtside, and he'd be happy to sign autographs and shake hands and the like. And so my dad bought me an ABA basketball, a red, white, and blue basketball, and we walked down there, and Mayor Lugar very graciously said nice things to me as a 9 or 10-year-old and signed my ABA basketball. And my dad said, "Now this is a very special basketball. You know you have to put it on the shelf and you can never play with it." And I said, "Dad, I know that." Well, about 2 days later, it was raining and the hoop was outside. I took my Dick Lugar signed basketball and played, and after about 5 minutes, I looked down, the signature was gone. So if I ever thought more than about a day ahead in my life period, I would have gone on Amazon or eBay, and I would have gotten an ABA basketball and gotten it signed by Senator Lugar in front of all you, but I'm still going to do it, Senator, so be ready for a phone call. I'm going to come over to your office and see you. But part of the reason I bring that story up is I used that story a lot over the course of the next decades of my life as I had various leadership roles. And what I used it to illustrate was, as a leader, or in this case as a mayor, you can never have a bad day. Because in my entire childhood, I only met the mayor once, and it was at that moment. And if he had been in a bad mood, or been a little brusque with me or something like that, I would have remembered that my whole life. But he wasn't. He was, of course, as gracious as he always is. And it's been a leadership lesson for me. You can never have a bad day as a mayor. You can never have a bad day as a leader. Because it's not about you. It's about the job you hold and the respect that people have for you and how special it is for them to have a chance to meet you. So it was very special for me to meet you as a 9-year-old. Now, briefly, I went to Washington as mayor once or twice a year. I went more than that, but once or twice a year I had a chance to sit down with the senator and we would talk about things about Indianapolis. And we'd sit there and talk for an hour. I always felt like I was taking his time away from more important things. But I realized how much he cared about Indianapolis because he knew more about, honestly, I'm not kidding you, he knew more about what was going on in the city than I did. And it was a little embarrassing at times when he could tell me about stuff that was going on in some obscure corner of the far, northeast corner that I didn't know about and he did know about. But it was, I could tell his enthusiasm every time he was talking about Indianapolis, and I felt the same way. Those visits were a real highlight for me. And I remember one time after I left, the senator, your staff came up to me and said, "We're always so happy when you come here because Senator Lugar loves to talk about Indianapolis." He's like a kid in a candy store when he gets to sit down and just talk about Indianapolis for an hour. In fact, we think he may never have been happier in his professional life than when he was mayor of Indianapolis. So those are highlights from my time as mayor that I'll always remember as those opportunities that I had to spend with you. Let me just say thank you, Senator, Mayor, for your service, everything you have done in every capacity that you have held, every job that you've held, and even to this very day. You've served our city unlike hardly anybody else in its entire history. We're very honored to be able to honor you here today and to be a small part of your legacy. Thank you. And let me pass the baton to Mayor Greg Ballard.
Some things never change, like this conference room. It's amazing. It's amazing. It looks exactly the same, I think, when Senator Lugar held the office. I do want to echo Senator Goldsmith's saying that, Clay, it is easy to be mayor with the little endowment. And I know that you've done it. Jim, thank you so much. It's hard to imagine, I say this routinely, it's hard to imagine the city and the state without the little endowment. I can't thank you enough for all of that. I have a little different take on all of this, and it's probably because I spent, I think everybody here knows, I spent so much time in the Marine Corps, 23 years in the Marine Corps. One of the things that I always felt very strongly about while I was still in the service was what Senator Lugar and Senator Nunn did for all of us after that Berlin Wall came down. He kept people like me home with our families instead of having to go all over the world looking for what we call loose nukes or chemical munitions that could have been a real danger to the world. Senator Lugar and Senator Nunn made this world a much, much safer place for all of us, and that is not talked about very much anymore. And so when I became the mayor, I was thrilled to be able to go up and see Senator Lugar, and he seemed to be excited to talk to the new mayor. I certainly remember the first time we did that, and echo Mayor Peterson, he loved talking about Indianapolis. not much question about that. But I got there about 7 or 8 in the morning for breakfast, and he wanted to take me to the Senate dining room. And all I remember is here was this gentleman who was a few years older than I was, bounding up the stairs to get breakfast, and it was 7 or 8 a.m. and it was pretty clear at that point in time, as you know, Mayor Peterson, he knew what was going on in Indianapolis that day before I did, and because before I'd even called back, because he was up so early checking everything out, not just across the world, but back in Indianapolis also. It was remarkable how much he gave of himself all the time to the city, even while he was the senator and doing all those wonderful things around the world. So all of this was very meaningful to me as somebody who wore that uniform, but then I become the mayor, and I get to talk to him on a routine basis, which was an honor beyond belief. Every time I went up to D.C., I wanted to make sure I went in and talked to the senator, even after he was done being the senator. When I went up there, I've been up to his office a few times. He's looked some stuff over for me. His aide continues to look stuff over for me that I'm writing about. And so his office and Senator, you have been tremendous to me and for the city for so long. And I just can't thank you enough for what you have done. And it's been a tremendous relationship. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the current mayor of Indianapolis, Mayor Joe.
Well, indeed, good afternoon. I, for all the reasons expressed, am very proud to be here today, but I frankly don't know what any of these guys have been talking about. I do know, Clay, that we have successfully held back the foreign interlopers. When Mayor Peterson says a mayor can't have a bad day, that's spoken like a true former mayor. Everything is so much brighter when your foot's no longer on the accelerator. In all seriousness, thank you to Clay, to Don Altmeyer for your presence today. A sincere welcome to everyone, and deep thanks to all of our former mayors. You know, I occasionally on the first floor get to pass by the busts of our former mayors, and they serve as a reminder of the great minds who have helped build this community into the visionary community that Indianapolis has become. We will be grateful and thankful to Mayor Ballard, who championed our city's progress into the 21st century with new points of civic emphasis, such as the formation of Sustain Envy, the greening that Mayor Ballard always championed, and some of the innovations that his administration brought. You know, many things that Mayor Peterson accomplished: a beautiful airport, a new Lucas Oil Stadium, and expanded convention center. But I think perhaps history will treat Bart Peterson quite well as an educational leader, not just in Indianapolis, but an educational leader in the United States of America, pioneering our system of innovation and reformation of public education through the mayoral-sponsored charter schools. Steve Goldsmith, well, he was all about smart cities before anyone knew about smart cities. It's become the rage. And Steve Goldsmith led us on that cutting edge to a brighter future for all of Indianapolis. And of course, his name has been mentioned, but worthy of our remembrance, our honor, and our memory today is that of Bill Hudnut, whose unparalleled 16 years of service, in his words, helped move us from India no place to India show place. And I'm the poor schmuck who's got to fill those shoes. Talk about shoes that you have to fill. Hudnut and Goldsmith and Peterson and Ballard. And yet 50 years ago this year, a young man named Richard Lugar ushered in what many call the post-Unigov era. And that is true. I have a different way of describing that period of time. Dick Lugar and his administration, in no small measure because of Unigov, ushered in the era of modern Indianapolis. Our city became and continues to become a great American city because of Dick Lugar's vision in 1968 and beyond. Senator Lugar, then Mayor Lugar, defined throughout his career what it means to be a statesman in an era when that phrase isn't used quite as often as it once was. A leader who was truly dedicated to the betterment of all that he served. A leader who reached across the aisle, not because it was an occasional accomplishment that he could tout, but because it would yield the best results for the people he was elected to serve. For throughout his distinguished career, Senator Lugar knew what it took to get things done. And as mayors, that's our mantra, is it not? At the end of the day, when you serve as mayor, your job is to get things done. And that's exactly what Dick Lugar has done for 50 years. Senator Lugar, your commitment to improving lives has taken you around the globe, from the halls of the Capitol, to the hallowed grounds of the Vatican, to the front lines of the Middle East. The roads to peace that you have paved have always led back to Indianapolis, Indiana, and to the threshold of this great edifice, our city county building. And so, it is only fitting that today we together, as one city, consecrate your legacy on that very threshold with the soon-to-be completed Richard G. Lugar Plaza. Senator Lugar, would you join me? Because my current office, Senator, grants me the privilege to do so, on behalf of all the people of Indianapolis, I want to give you our thanks. And without further delay, please join me in welcoming the 44th mayor of the city of Indianapolis, Richard G. Lugar.
It's an overwhelming moment for me to have an opportunity to thank all of my dear friends who are here today and so many who are thinking about it here today have communicated with me their best wishes for Indianapolis, for its future, their joy with all that is past and all that is to come. I am so grateful to each one of you who have spoken today, each one of you who have meant so much in my life. I thank you for remembering our visits here and in Washington and around the world, the ways we have tried to work together during the past 50 years. I'm indebted to the Building Authority, to the Liddy Endowment. Mention has been made of my friend Jim Morris, who was here in the office from almost the beginning, that 50-year tenure. I appreciate P. McAllister, 99 years old, headed toward a century, who has stuck with us throughout that entire period of time. Max Schumacher, my dear friend from Short Reach High School, who built a magnificent stadium with the aid of so many of you, and is emblematic, along with Jim and others, of the great sports tradition that already was here and is now exemplified nationwide and worldwide. I'm so grateful to Mike McClellan, the City County Council, and the work that they do every day. Magnificent, and help of Bill Hogsett and those who are working with them. I was overwhelmed when I first heard a rumor that this day might happen. I found it unbelievable, and I still really look forward to the proof, Joe. When I see see those girders come down and watch what's going on out there. I am tempted and decided to overcome that temptation to tell a story today about one of the things that happened here in the City County building. And at the beginning, the outset of my mayoral career that meant so much to me, I was excited by the fact that President Richard Nixon and his wife Pat have been encouraged by their supporters and their staffs in Washington to finally go outside the city limits of Washington, D.C. The first year that President Nixon served, there were many who advised him, given demonstrations with regard to the Vietnam War and other reasons, the divisiveness in our country, it would be inadvisable for him to take simply a trip outside the country to be with people. And certainly took some private trips, some secret situations, but in any event, the fact was that Richard Nixon decided to come to Indianapolis as the first opportunity, and this was in the second year of his administration, toward its beginning. In part, this is because John Lindsay, who had been the mayor of New York City, had left the Republican Party and gone to the Democratic Party. Because of Unigov, although the data was still somewhat superficial, it appeared Indianapolis had entered the top 10 of cities in terms of population in the country at this time. And to make a long story short, they decided to come here. To say the least, this was sort of an awesome situation for us to prepare for such a coming, given all the grave problems the Nixon administration kept pointing out. But we were prepared, as a matter of fact. We had young people throwing confetti from buildings around the Monument Circle as the president came around. We had all sorts of people along West Washington Street, where they used to come in from the airport. I have a beautiful picture of my 4 little sons at that point greeting the president and Mrs. Nixon as they got off their plane. But they were coming here to the City County building. And I did not look around that day. We had a fairly small platform out there on what now will be the Plaza in front of the City County building. There were an estimated 20,000 people when we got here. I was told there were sharpshooters around in other buildings to offer special security. And the president obviously was somewhat unnerved by the whole process. I could tell as we stood together there on the platform. Mrs. Nixon was with him. His remarks were very brief, and I, at least, courteous enough to be very brief likewise, and suggested it was time for us to go up to the 25th floor of the City County building where we are today. I mention this because already in this room were half a dozen members of the Nixon cabinet. He had decided that, in fact, we would have a conference and talk about cities. And I thought that was a wonderful idea. In any event, we got into the building safely. As I came up on the elevator today to the 25th floor, it reminded me of that day that palpably, obviously, President Nixon was tremendously relieved that he was off the platform, that he was out of harm's way. And about the 6th or 7th floor, he leaned over to me and he said, "Lugar, I want you to go to Brussels with Moynihan to represent the United States and the cities of America at the NATO conference on cities." Pat Moynihan was then a staff member of Nixon's, later became a very distinguished senator with whom I served. And so I said, "Well, Mr. President, I'd be honored to do that." So by the time we got to the 25th floor, that had been decided. President Nixon announced that to the cabinet. And we had a short meeting of sorts here with the various members. It was a tremendously exciting experience for a young mayor, such as myself, and I was thinking about the future. I took advantage of that opportunity the President presented to go with Pat Moynihan to Brussels for this conference, and not lacking nerve in the process, I invited all the mayors of the world to come to Indianapolis the next year. I said, we are going to have the first international conference of cities. It's going to be held in Indianapolis, Indiana. Well, in fact, ultimately, about 50 responded from almost every continent on this earth. It was an exciting process in terms of the dynamics of our population. All sorts of families, of different heritage in Indianapolis began to divulge where they had come from. They wanted to see the mayor from wherever that might be. They had small breakfasts or dinners and so forth. We had 500 students out on the Monument Circle singing Ode to Joy, which was in the NATO anthem at that point. It was a glorious experience. President Nixon thoroughly enjoyed it, and this led to many more opportunities that I had during his administration, ill-fated as it was ultimately to be, to go to places on this earth, to take advantage of being named vice chairman of the Council on Intergovernmental Relations with Nelson Rockefeller as the chairman at that point. And having an idea, first of all, as I mentioned Jim Morris, to find out for sure that we were going to have revenue sharing in this country. To pin down long before anybody else knew it how many dollars would come to Indianapolis. And then to plan to allocate that to build the Market Square Arena so that the Pacers would become big league in the NBA. It's about a $17 million figure, which is very modest at that time, but nevertheless, many of our citizens felt this was rather audacious for the mayor really to carve out a block, build a stadium with revenue sharing money, and all sorts of other things might have happened with it, I suspect. But it was exciting to see the building of sports, the building of tourism, the coming together really of the United States of America here in these various ways. I mention all of this today because I'm so proud to be a part of the mayor group that is assembled, plus Bill Hudnut, who we all remember. Greater Memphis Progress Committee had a wonderful program a couple of years ago, which some of you were here involved with. And they aligned up all of us as mayors. And in sequence, we went through experiences. And one of the wonderful things about this, that almost every citizen grasped, was that each one of us built upon what one had done before or remembered that very favorably. This was not a city in which, despite partisan politics, people said, thank goodness I was elected so I could correct all of that. I could rectify all the misdeeds of my predecessor. In fact, it was a very clear flow, strong progress all the way through. And this is what I cherish today. Having my dear friends, the mayors of Indianapolis, who have meant so much to me throughout this time, through our conversations, through opportunities we've had to work together. And then all of you, as dear friends, who have come to celebrate with us. And now we look forward to the Plaza, to a new chapter in the life of the city of Indianapolis. As Mayor Hogshead and I looked out from his window today, in the corner there on the 25th floor that I cherish so much, we see all sorts of beautiful condominiums, apartment buildings, other dwellings. This is now an area that has a very substantial population of people who can enjoy each other if they have opportunities to do so. Now, there are obviously theaters and sports situations and so forth, but my imagination maybe carries me away that there will be many hundreds of people every day on the Plaza who will get to know each other better, who will get to know our city better and want to do something to lead our city and to help our city, to make a difference, the continuing progress that we all cherish. So I thank you, each one of you, for coming for this celebration of the beginning, at least the naming process. The work is still to be completed. I certainly look forward to seeing its completion as all of you do. But it gives us, once again, an opportunity to thank the Lord that we are citizens of Indianapolis, that we have lived in a place that has really meant a lot to people and continues to grow in that meaning. And I'm so grateful that during my lifetime, I witnessed all of this, and I pray for the future. Thank you so very much.